LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with Asma Mia.
Thank you for all your tweets and texts. But we're going to switch just for a while to talk about Syria, of course, very much in the news. And today the update, I suppose, is, well, two things. David Cameron is chairing a meeting of the National Security Council. That's currently underway. And Britain is going to seek UN Security Council backing for all necessary measures to protect civilians in Syria. This is going to be a UK drafted draft resolution which will be put to a meeting of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council in New York this evening, condemning the chemical weapons attack by Assad. We know, of course, that Parliament has been recalled for tomorrow. There'll be a debate and then a vote on what action should be taken. Let's get to the view around the world. We're going to speak to Dr. James Boyes, who is a US foreign policy expert and author of the forthcoming book, Clinton's Grand Strategy. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Right, Dr. James Boyes, first of all, what do you expect to happen with this draft resolution?
Well, I would imagine that the British will introduce it. It will get some degree of a reception and favourable response from the Americans and the French, and really be unacceptable to the Russians or the Chinese, which is kind of what people expect heading into this. We're going to get British parliamentarian support for this, but the problem is ultimately it has very little support within the American people or from the Russians or the Chinese. So it's really on very rocky foundations, I think. Yeah,
that's really interesting. That was going to be my next question. What does the American public make of any possible involvement in any kind of military action?
This action has a support of just 9% of the Americans polled.
What have people been saying in America about the footage from that alleged chemical attack?
Well, I think what you're seeing is almost an emotional response to this. We've seen Senator Kerry, for example, come out and use very emotional language with regards to this. The same with the president. But I think one of the great questions is why the great push now? There were suspicions that the Assad regime had used chemical weapons a year ago. I think the great difference is that 12 months ago, President Obama was in the midst of an election campaign and didn't want to act. Now you see he has a new group of advisors around him, people like Susan Rice, Samantha Power. Samantha Power, of course, who was very, very critical of the American regime and its lack of leadership and resolve during the Balkan crisis. So I think he's getting an awful lot of advice, which is calling him to action now. We've got an American report coming out at the end of the week, which is meant to be detailing the August 21 attack. And as your other speaker said, how can we possibly have that data to hand when those reports aren't even in yet? So there's a real rush to judgment here, I think.
Well, just very quickly on that, because I asked the same question yesterday. There wasn't there, an alleged attack previously, but that was never proved, was it?
Well, part of the reason it wasn't proved is because there wasn't the people in the ground to do the work, arguably. And what you saw happen was Barack Obama speaking off the cuff, using this concept of a red line, and he inadvertently backed himself into a corner, which both he and his administration have been desperately trying to get out of for the last 12 months, I think.
But what is wrong with having a red line over the use of chemical weapons?
Well, there isn't a problem with the red line, but the problem is that when you say, if you do such and such, there will be repercussions, you're held to your word. And that means having to do something or losing all sort of moral authority and political leadership. And in politics, one should always avoid that. One of the great successes for the Cuban Missile Crisis was President Kennedy's ability not to paint himself or his opponent Khrushchev into a corner. And I suggest to you that Barack Obama, quite inadvertently, has backed himself into a diplomatic corner and has been desperately trying to get out of it for the last 12 months.
OK, well, thank you to all of you. To Dr. James Boyes, that's the last voice you heard there.